In the tumultuous landscape of Ukrainian politics, a familiar figure has emerged at a pivotal moment. Petro O. Poroshenko, who served as Ukraine's president from 2014 to 2019, is seizing an opportunity amidst the renewed political fervor that has followed years of relative calm due to the ongoing war. With peace talks gaining traction, particularly under the auspices of the Trump administration, Poroshenko is advocating for a coalition government that includes opposition figures to facilitate a ceasefire and pave the way for future elections. The backdrop to this political maneuvering is significant. When Russia launched its full-scale invasion on February 24, 2022, President Volodymyr Zelensky and Poroshenko publicly set aside their political rivalry to unite against a common enemy. This temporary truce, however, has given way to a resurgence of political jockeying as the conflict enters a new phase, with discussions of potential peace on the horizon. In recent interviews, Poroshenko has argued for the necessity of a national unity government, suggesting that integrating opposition voices into Zelensky's administration could smooth the peace process. "We don't have any other option other than a coalition of national unity," he asserted. His call for unity comes in stark contrast to Zelensky's approach, which has been marked by increasing pressure on political adversaries through law enforcement, raising concerns over the democratic process in a time of war. Tensions have escalated further with the recent freezing of Poroshenko's bank accounts by Ukraine's National Security Council, an act he decries as disastrous, unconstitutional, and extrajudicial. The former president voiced that should he face arrest, it would signal a concerning shift towards authoritarianism in Ukraine, a sentiment echoed by some analysts who perceive the government's actions as an attempt to stifle dissent. As the peace talks develop, the dynamics between the two leaders reflect broader societal divisions. Zelensky, whose government has been praised internationally for its resilience against Russian aggression, faces criticism at home for his decision to exclude opposition from governance. The absence of elections under martial law complicates the political environment, and with Zelensky's term extended under these extraordinary conditions, the path to returning to normal democratic processes appears fraught with challenges. Poroshenko's political aspirations are complicated by polling that places him significantly behind Zelensky and the highly popular General Zaluzhny, who currently serves as Ukraine's ambassador to Britain. Observers speculate that Poroshenko may be seeking an alliance with Zaluzhny, although the details of their discussions remain under wraps. The former president has acknowledged the need to navigate carefully in this evolving landscape, describing the current moment as one ripe for diplomacy. Indeed, the implications of these developments stretch beyond Ukrainian borders. With an envoy from the Trump administration actively engaging in discussions in Russia, the potential for a ceasefire could reshape not only Ukraine's political landscape but also its relationship with external powers like the United States. Poroshenko's previous dealings with Trump, including a frank exchange over Crimea's status, illustrate the complex interplay of international relations that could influence the outcome of peace negotiations. As Ukraine stands at this crossroads, the interplay of domestic politics and international diplomacy will undoubtedly shape its future. With ongoing conflict and the pressing need for a cohesive government response, the actions taken by Zelensky and Poroshenko in the coming weeks will be critical. Whether the political wounds of the past can be healed in the name of national unity remains to be seen, but for now, the stakes are higher than ever. The world watches closely as Ukraine navigates this fragile moment, hoping for a resolution that honors the resilience of its people while fostering a stable political landscape for years to come. In a tragic incident that has drawn international attention, recent evidence suggests that Israeli tank fire was responsible for a deadly strike on a United Nations guest house in Gaza. This attack, which occurred amid ongoing hostilities in the region, has raised serious questions about the conduct of military operations and the protection of civilians in conflict zones. Photographic evidence obtained by the Washington Post points to the involvement of Israeli tanks in the artillery barrage that struck the guest house where several civilians had sought refuge. Eyewitness accounts describe a scene of chaos and devastation, with immediate impacts including the loss of lives and injuries to numerous individuals. Reports indicate that at least 15 people were killed in the strike, leading to widespread condemnation from humanitarian organizations and calls for accountability. The Israeli military has stated that its operations in Gaza are aimed at eliminating threats from armed groups, particularly Hamas, which has been launching rockets into Israeli territory. However, the international community is increasingly scrutinizing the methods employed in these operations, especially when civilian casualties are involved. A spokesperson for the UN expressed deep concern over the attack, emphasizing that the protection of civilians must be paramount in any military action. This incident is emblematic of the broader challenges faced in the region, where the line between military objectives and civilian safety often becomes blurred. Analysts suggest that the repeated targeting of civilian structures despite the stated military objectives demonstrates a troubling disregard for international humanitarian law. Experts warn that such actions not only exacerbate the humanitarian crisis but also fuel resentment and further violence. Moreover, the implications of this event extend beyond immediate casualties. The strike has the potential to strain diplomatic relations as calls for investigations and accountability grow louder. In the context of a volatile geopolitical landscape, the fallout from this incident could hinder peace negotiations and contribute to a cycle of retaliatory violence. In light of these developments, international observers are keenly watching how both the Israeli government and the United Nations will respond. The incident has reignited discussions about the need for stronger mechanisms to protect civilians in conflict zones and ensure that humanitarian principles are upheld. As the situation continues to evolve, the world remains on alert, hoping for a resolution that prioritizes peace and the safeguarding of innocent lives. Looking ahead, the focus will likely shift towards how military strategies can be adjusted to prevent further tragedies. The ongoing conflict underscores the urgent need for dialogue and a concerted effort from all parties involved to find sustainable solutions that respect human rights and international law. In a significant move that could impact the technology sector, former President Donald Trump has announced plans to exempt certain tech products from the latest tariffs while simultaneously proposing separate levies aimed specifically at the tech industry. This decision, reported by the Wall Street Journal, comes amid ongoing debates about trade policies and their implications for both consumers and businesses. According to sources, Trump's administration is keen to alleviate some financial pressure on consumers by removing tariffs on popular tech items, a gesture that may resonate with voters concerned about rising costs. The exemption includes a range of products, potentially easing the burden on manufacturers and retailers who have faced increasing costs due to previous tariffs. The hope is that this temporary relief will stimulate consumer spending in the tech sector, which has been critical to the economy's recovery post-pandemic. However, the proposal for new tech-specific levies raises eyebrows. Industry experts are wary of the potential consequences. Creating separate tariffs for tech products could stifle innovation and hinder growth in a sector that thrives on global collaboration, remarked an industry analyst who wished to remain anonymous. This sentiment is echoed by many in the tech community, who argue that such measures could lead to increased prices for consumers and disrupt supply chains already strained by the pandemic. The backdrop to these developments is a broader discussion about the U.S. relationship with major technology manufacturers, particularly in Asia. As tensions grow over issues such as data privacy and intellectual property rights, the administration's dual approach could be seen as a strategy to maintain leverage while attempting to protect American consumers from higher prices. The impacts of these tariffs are complex and multifaceted. On one hand, exempting certain products may provide short-term relief. On the other, the introduction of new tariffs could lead to retaliatory measures from affected countries, further complicating trade relations. For example, if manufacturers face higher costs due to tariffs, these expenses are often passed on to consumers, potentially leading to higher prices for everything from smartphones to laptops. As the situation evolves, it remains to be seen how these proposed changes will affect both the tech industry and the wider economy. Analysts are closely monitoring the administration's next steps. as the outcome of these policies could set precedents for future trade negotiations. The tech sector, known for its rapid innovation and global partnerships, may face a pivotal moment as it navigates these new regulatory landscapes. Looking ahead, the interplay between tariffs and the technology market will be crucial. Stakeholders from various sectors will be watching closely to see whether these measures foster collaboration or create further divisions in an already competitive landscape. The coming months will likely reveal the true impact of these decisions shaping the future of technology in the United States and beyond. As the U.S. grapples with the implications of a turbulent trade landscape under President Donald Trump's administration, the country's aspirations to revive a bygone era of manufacturing may inadvertently deepen its economic challenges. Trump's recent rhetoric, particularly during his Liberation Day speech, reflects a longing for a return to labor-intensive manufacturing jobs, echoing sentiments from communities once reliant on industrial work. However, experts warn that this nostalgia could lead the nation into a quagmire of economic decline. In his speech on April 2, Trump invited retired auto worker Brian Panbecker to share his experiences watching factories in Detroit close down. Panbecker expressed hope that Trump's tariff policies would revitalize these underutilized plants, saying, "I can't wait to see what's happening 3 or 4 years down the road." Yet this optimism is challenged by stark realities that suggest a more nuanced approach is necessary for sustainable economic growth. Over recent decades, the U.S. manufacturing sector has seen a significant decline in jobs, largely due to competitive imports and automation. According to research by Jim Reed of Deutsche Bank, the wealth-to-income ratio in the U.S. has tracked closely with international trade, suggesting that while globalization has benefited shareholders through more efficient supply chains, it has simultaneously squeezed low-skilled American workers. As Reed put it, this potentially reflects the benefits of globalization accruing to shareholders, while squeezing developed market labor. Trump's administration has positioned itself as a defender of the American worker, proclaiming a commitment to protecting the middle class against outsourcers and reinforcing this stance amid stock market declines. However, the administration's approach raises critical questions about its feasibility. The vision of bringing back millions of factory jobs relies on the assumption that Americans are willing to return to labor-intensive roles. A notion that a 2024 Cato survey suggests may not be widely shared. Only 1 in 4 respondents believed they would be better off in a factory job compared to their current employment. The challenge of onshoring manufacturing is further compounded by limited labor supply and capital availability. Rising import duties may incentivize some factory owners to relocate production to the U.S., but the costs associated with such a move are significant. For instance, Apple would require an estimated $30 billion in 3 years just to shift a fraction of its supply chain from Asia back to the U.S. The administration views these costs as a transition cost on the path to revitalizing blue-collar jobs, yet it remains unclear what economic sacrifices Americans are prepared to make for this vision. Even if some factory jobs were to return, the broader economic implications of a protectionist agenda could be detrimental. U.S. manufacturing output has actually increased over the past 4 decades, with American industry becoming more productive by producing higher-value products with fewer workers. This shift has led to the creation of millions of jobs in sectors such as professional services and logistics, which may be at risk if resources are redirected towards labor-intensive manufacturing. Critics highlight that tariffs not only raise consumer prices but also threaten existing jobs in industries reliant on imported parts. The Peterson Institute for International Economics pointed out that previous tariffs under Trump's administration led to increased production costs and reduced employment opportunities in affected sectors. The cost of saving a single job in steel-producing industries was estimated at around $650,000. Raising concerns about the long-term viability of such protectionist measures. As the immediate consequences of Trump's tariffs unfold, the impacts on consumer behavior and broader economic stability remain uncertain. The bond market has already reacted to the administration's policies, with Treasury yields rising sharply, indicating a loss of confidence among investors. Some economists warn that the perception of the U.S. government as a reliable steward of economic stability is being eroded, potentially leading to higher borrowing costs across the economy. The path forward appears fraught with challenges. To truly support former industrialized regions, experts suggest a shift towards facilitating adaptability and resilience rather than clinging to outdated models of employment. Initiatives focusing on retraining, easing planning regulations for urban regeneration, and incentivizing investments in innovative sectors could foster a more dynamic economy that embraces the realities of globalization. In conclusion, while Trump's vision of a manufacturing renaissance may resonate with a nostalgic sentiment, the economic landscape demands a more nuanced understanding of the complexities at play. As the administration navigates this terrain, the implications of its policies will not only affect American labor markets but will also shape the future of U.S. economic power on the global stage. The question remains whether the desire to restore a past era can coexist with the necessity of adapting to a rapidly evolving economy, or if it will ultimately lead to a poorer, less competitive America. In a significant escalation of tensions between the United States and Ukraine, recent reports indicate that the Biden administration is demanding control over a crucial gas pipeline that transports Russian gas to Europe. This development, described by a senior economist in Kiev as reminiscent of colonial-type bullying, highlights the complexities of international relations amidst ongoing conflict and energy supply concerns. During a meeting in Kiev on April 12, U.S. officials presented a revised proposal that includes a demand for the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation to take control of the pipeline running from Sudza, Russia to Uzhhorod, Ukraine. This pipeline is vital not only for Ukraine but also for European energy security. Previously, Ukraine earned significant transit fees from gas shipments, generating hundreds of millions of euros, particularly during the early years of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The demands have escalated, with sources indicating that the latest draft from the U.S. is more aggressive than earlier proposals. It initially centered on a minerals deal where the U.S. sought access to $500 billion worth of rare metals from Ukraine in exchange for military support. However, the negotiations have soured, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressing a desire for a more equitable arrangement, insisting on a fair split of revenues from any joint ventures. "I am just defending what belongs to Ukraine," Zelensky stated, emphasizing the need for mutual benefits. Tensions have further intensified as former President Donald Trump, now back in office, has publicly criticized Zelensky for allegedly trying to back out of commitments made during previous administrations. Trump's administration has shown little willingness to offer the military support that Ukraine has previously sought. Instead, Trump has threatened that failure to comply with U.S. demands would lead to big problems for Ukraine. As the U.S. presses its demands, Ukraine faces additional military pressure. Following the announcement of increased military aid from Kiev's allies, Russian forces have intensified airstrikes targeting civilian infrastructure in Ukraine. This ongoing conflict underscores the precarious balance of power and the stakes involved for both nations as they navigate their respective interests amid a complex geopolitical landscape. The economic implications of U.S. demands stretch beyond immediate military concerns. Analysts warn that such aggressive posturing may stifle Ukraine's ability to manage its resources effectively while also risking further antagonism from Russia. Volodymyr Landa, an economist at the Center for Economic Strategy in Kiev, noted that the U.S. approach appears to be one of extraction rather than partnership, predicting that Ukraine is unlikely to accept such unfavorable terms. As the situation develops, it remains crucial to monitor how Ukraine will respond to these U.S. demands and whether it can maintain its sovereignty over essential resources while seeking support from Western allies. The outcome of these negotiations will not only affect the immediate energy landscape but could also set a precedent for how international relations are conducted in times of conflict. As both nations navigate this fraught terrain, the potential for future cooperation or conflict hangs in the balance, with implications that could reverberate throughout Europe and beyond. In the dynamic world of high school sports, rankings serve not only as a gauge of performance but also as a narrative of ambition, resilience, and community pride. As the season progresses, the Los Angeles Times has released its latest top 25 high school baseball rankings, providing a snapshot of the top-performing teams in Southern California, with the 8th week of games behind them. These rankings reflect not only statistics but also the fervor of student-athletes striving for excellence. Leading the pack is Corona High School, boasting an impressive record of 17 wins against just 1 loss. The team's standout pitcher Seth Hernandez has made a significant impact on the mound with a remarkable 0.24 ERA, striking out 58 batters while allowing only 3 walks over 29.1 innings. Their consistent performance has kept them in the number, who has accumulated 25 hits with an impressive batting average of .490. Meanwhile, La Mirada, with a record of 15-4, is preparing for a crucial 3-game series against GAR, aiming to reclaim their former glory after dropping from 2nd to 4th in the rankings. The rankings also highlight the emergence of teams like Cajon, which at 16-2 features Gavin Garcia with an undefeated pitching record of 5-0 and a batting average of .473, marking them as a team to watch in upcoming games. Their entry into the rankings at number 12 reflects the shifting dynamics of the league as teams battle for playoff positions. The competitive nature of high school baseball is further emphasized by the inclusion of teams like Ayala, which has made a notable entrance into the rankings at number 25 with an 8-0 start in the Palomares League. Their success adds to the narrative of a season filled with unexpected turns and emerging talents. As teams continue to vie for dominance, the implications of these rankings extend beyond mere numbers. They foster a sense of community among students, parents, and alumni, uniting them in support of their local teams. The excitement surrounding upcoming matchups will undoubtedly influence attendance and engagement at games, making high school baseball a cherished springtime tradition in Southern California. Looking ahead, the stakes will only grow higher as teams prepare for crucial series and potential playoff scenarios. The performance of these young athletes will continue to shape their futures, whether in collegiate baseball or beyond, as they strive to leave their mark on the sport. As fans and families rally behind their teams, the anticipation builds for what promises to be an exhilarating conclusion to the high school baseball season.